There is a reason many Viking and Arctic settler homes were described as eerily quiet inside, even during storms that howled loud enough to shake timber. This silence was not accidental, and it was not simply a byproduct of thick walls. It was the result of a deliberate building technique so effective that it became guarded knowledge in some northern communities. Not because it was magical or forbidden, but because it meant survival. In places where a poorly built home could kill you in a single winter, knowledge was controlled, passed carefully, and sometimes withheld from outsiders who could misuse it or exhaust shared resources. What modern builders mistake for primitive simplicity was, in reality, a deeply refined understanding of sound, heat, air, and human endurance. Why silence inside a home mattered as much as warmth in Arctic environments. For Viking settlers and later Arctic communities, silence was not comfort. It was information. A quiet interior meant no drafts, no air leaks, no heat loss. Sound travels through moving air. If wind could be heard inside, heat was escaping. Silence meant containment. Homes that stayed silent stayed warm longer, required less fuel, and protected occupants from exhaustion caused by constant cold stress. Builders learned to judge a structure not by how it looked, but by how little it spoke during a storm. How Viking homes were designed to absorb sound instead of reflecting it. The technique centered on layered absorption rather than rigid barriers. Walls were built thick not just for strength, but to trap air and dampen vibration. Timber frames were packed with turf, sod, moss, clay, and animal fibers. These materials broke up sound waves instead of bouncing them back. Roofs were layered the same way, you know. Turf roofs did more than just insulate, actually. They muted rain, wind, and impact noise. Inside, this created a space where external chaos faded into near silence. This wasn't luxury, not at all. It allowed people to sleep, think, and conserve energy during those long winters. Why airflow control was the hidden core of the silent home technique. The most important feature was not visible. Airflow was restricted intentionally. Modern homes aim for ventilation everywhere. Viking homes aimed for controlled breathing. Entrances were narrow, you know. Some homes used offset doorways or short entry tunnels that trapped cold air before it reached the living space. Smoke holes were carefully sized to release smoke without pulling warm air out aggressively. When air doesn't rush, sound doesn't travel. And when sound doesn't travel, heat doesn't either. Why this knowledge was guarded and not casually shared. In small Arctic settlements, resources were finite. Timber, turf, and fuel had limits. A well-built silent home used less firewood, lasted longer, and reduced strain on shared supplies. Teaching these methods indiscriminately could increase settlement density beyond what land could support. Some techniques were passed only within families or trusted groups, not because of secrecy for secrecy's sake, but because, well, survival demanded balance. This is likely where later stories of forbidden knowledge originate. It was controlled knowledge, not mythical suppression. How silence inside the home directly improved survival outcomes. Quiet homes allowed better sleep, which improved immune response and decision-making. Reduced drafts meant fewer respiratory illnesses. Stable temperatures prevented frost injuries even when fires burned low. Animals housed near or beneath living spaces also benefited, adding heat without noise or disruption. The entire structure worked as one system. How modern homes lost this principle and became, louder and colder. Modern materials reflect sound instead of absorbing it. Drywall, concrete and glass transmit vibration efficiently. Ventilation systems move air constantly, carrying noise and heat away together. A modern home that sounds quiet often relies on insulation, added after the fact, not integrated into the structure itself. When power fails, silence vanishes along with warmth. So, let's talk about how you can apply the silent Viking home principle today. First, start by paying attention to sound. If you hear wind indoors, that means heat is escaping. It's best to seal air leaks before adding any heat. Use layered materials that absorb rather than reflect. Things like thick curtains, wool wall hangings, cork panels and natural fibre insulation can reduce both noise and heat loss. Instead of trying to eliminate airflow entirely, control it. Use entryways that trap cold air, and do your best to reduce straight-through drafts. The main idea is to focus on containment, not circulation. In cabins or off-grid builds, earth-bermed walls and sod-covered roofs remain, incredibly effective. These methods still outperform many modern solutions in cold climates. What this technique teaches us about real resilience. The silent Viking home was not about hiding knowledge. It was about respecting it. Builders understood that warmth, quiet and survival were, linked. They designed homes that worked with physics instead of fighting it. Silence was proof the system was working. If this deep dive into Viking and Arctic survival engineering added value to your understanding of historical living, do consider subscribing to the channel for more serious, research-driven content. Share this video with fellow history enthusiasts and preparedness-minded viewers. These lessons have lasted 1,000 years for a reason.